Hi, everyone. This is Sam Price, and welcome to another episode of Probate Notes, your podcast about the probate industry. And today I have a great guest speaker. His name is Justin Fautsch. He's with Vimvi Real Estate. Hi, Justin.
How you doing, Sam?
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I wanted to get a little introduction to you and kind of let our listeners know a little bit about where you're from and your background.
Sure. In a nutshell, I was a professional sales guy. That's what I did. Graduated from the University of Iowa, born in Chicago, raised, on the East Coast, south of Philadelphia, in a little town called Lancaster. Went to college in Iowa, graduated with an English degree, go Hawks, and then moved out to LA in 2001. Was firing off 50 resumes a day and got picked up by ADP, did that whole thing. Got into Smith & Nephew, to Medtronic, to St. Jude, and St. Jude Medical. They were acquired by Abbott. And, I was a medical device guy. Once I got to medical device, I really loved medical device. It was, I felt the calling for it. I was good at it. I enjoyed it. I was the top guy there, started managing teams. And then I left and did my own medical device distributorship. So, to escape non-competes and all sorts of other stuff, I moved to Chicago. And I really, Chicago was sort of the birthplace of my true entrepreneurial thing when I was on my own. So I had a company there, had a wonderful partner, business partner. My kids I think my wife was pregnant with my second. So it was all all gas, no break. It was crazy time, and I really working without a net and made it work. It was a special time in my life. I really liked it. I love Chicago. For everyone that's in Chicago, go Cubs. And then I had the opportunity to exit from that, and that was the first time that an entrepreneurial thing like that had really worked to completion.
But why did you choose going into real estate when you came from sales of medical devices? Why was the interest there?
I think that's a really good question. And I have a real passion for leadership, for management, for being the steward of others. And I think that when I came to LA, I was just looking to get paid. let me please God be able to make my car payment and my rent and keep my phone on. Simple things like that.
Yeah.
Got a lot more complex when I met my wife. And I think that in that, when you're a young person, or in my time, when you're a young person, you're just trying to find some financial stability, really just trying to find financial stability and an opportunity that might've been linear with effort applied and financial return put in your account. I think there were a lot of promises made along that way that were unfulfilled. There were a lot of, you get to big companies and you have to make it work. You have to make it work. There's no chance of you not. Back then, if you made a lateral move, you were done. So I saw a lot of products that I didn't really believe in because I had to make money. And then I made money in my last business, and there was a lot of insurance involved. And I really became a professional. If you look back, I was just a professional chaser of the money. I mean, that's kind of what we did. And I got into something very luckily that I had passion for, and a product that I had passion for in the end. And I think that kind of carried over. And for the first time, I had some breathing room. And when I looked at real estate, I really saw, number one, a huge opportunity financially. I mean, I don't think there's a bigger opportunity for a salesperson or with a sales management background than selling real estate. So I've always worked in really crowded markets. I've always worked in super competitive markets, and there are a ton of agents. There are a ton of brokerages and brokers, but there's a lot. What I saw was that means there's a big gap to do things the right way. To deliver real value the way that I knew how to deliver value. And specifically in real estate, this trust and probate space was left a lot to be desired. At the time when we started, there weren't a lot of people doing it. And the people that were doing it, some of them were aging out. Some of them had been in existence and never really refined their processes. Um, and we looked and saw that we could really get in and become the 800-pound gorilla in the room. And that's what we set out to do. And I think that's what we've done.
Have you been a part of any transactions where you had a seller that didn't agree to pay the buyer's broker's commission?
Yeah, there are, well, there are other pieces of this that we'll talk about. So in that request, the seller can say, no, I'm not going to pay your commission. But then what are they going to do? I haven't had that happen because I'm good at negotiating this. But technically you have an offer on the table. The seller doesn't want to pay. It's never gone that far where if you reject it, they have to take this offer back. And I would imagine that if you're not going to pay the commission, the deal could still technically go through. I've never had it happen. If they want to complete the transaction and the buyer says, why are you holding up my deal? Agent, get out of here.
Yeah, right. Or the buyer has to pay their agent. That would be the other possibility, right?
So that brings me to exactly what I think the net effect is. I think that when we talk about the power brokers, and I in a transaction, it's the seller. Seller has traditionally been the power broker in this, and the selling agent has been the power. I think we've emboldened that position, and I don't think that's great. I don't think that's a good
Oh, I see. It's even stronger now.
It's even stronger, right? Until this shifts to a buyer's market. And we're seeing that, right? When so I'm saying that now in where it's cuspy. I mean, it's California, so it's kind of always technically a seller's market. But I mean, once this becomes a full buyer's market, the buyer will have more leverage and a better position. So maybe things will change. I mean, in the fullness of time, we'll see how that plays out. But in the short term, it's definitely better for seller.
You mentioned this about rehab. So if you're renovating a property, what kind of goes into the decision about do you do the rehab? Do you not do the rehab? Is it worth it to do that? Is it a cost benefit analysis?
Well, I think one of the first things you want to look at is protecting the probate estate or protecting the trust. You know, when you look, you have to run a very tight analysis on what are we doing, right? What are we doing? And we want to keep the protections. There are certain protections that a probate administrator has or a trustee of a trust has. And one of those, I'm again, generalize, but I haven't been in that house. I've never lived in that house. I don't know what's happening behind that wall or under, so big things like that, you want to be wary of. There are laws in California, particularly that can be very thorny for extensive rehab, right? Then you want to make sure that you're working with a licensed contractor. So I'm going to give it, I come from a place of abundance. If this is something that any agent or person is looking at, if you're doing it without a licensed contractor, you're nuts. And I'll tell you, if you're working with a contractor, you got to watch your pricing. So we have, along with our broker's license, we also have a contractor's license. Like that's the secret of our sauce. And we also are fully vertically integrated. So we know how to keep costs down. We know how to work on time. So again, we're looking at what can we do to prep this home for sale that's going to make us a multiple on investment, right? You got to make sure that in the house, there's enough equity. That you got to make sure that there's enough money, right? So, and that because whoever is going to be paying for this, it has to be able to cover, right? So if they're putting cash in, you have to make sure that they can get it out. Everybody loves when you put this in and you get that back. That's wonderful. Right.
Yeah.
So in my last life as a medical device person, it's about patient selection. You want your operation to be successful, right? In elective surgery, you want your operation to be successful. So only elect to operate on the people who you're going to have a really good outcome. I think the same is for this. Sometimes things are too far gone. and if they're too far gone, you have to be honest and you have to say, listen, this is what it is. But I will tell you the red flag for us, Sam, is when people say, I'm just going to sell this to an investor, I'm going to sell this to a flipper. Stop, pause, take a beat, think about what you're saying there, right? There is a company that knows how to do this stuff, that has a track record. And if you can mitigate the risk of those three things, time, return, and investment, those are the big risks for this and why people don't do it. I get it. I mean, try getting a contractor to show up on time consistently for a room addition or an ADU. It's a problem, but we've solved those problems.